Welcome everybody to the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Dursky, and if you have a story, please reach out. Whether it's Vermont or beyond, we would like to hear it from you. Now, up here is a lovely lady by the name Kat who has a story to share with us. So I guess let's just get into it. So before we do share your story, Kat, I just want to know, prior to your story, did you have any knowledge of the area beforehand?
Having grown up in Bennington, Vermont, you hear about it all of the time through, school and stories, and especially with the digital age, it sort of has gone viral over the years. So knowing about it beforehand and knowing where it is and growing up in that town, you hear all sorts of stories around the Bennington Triangle. So especially with all of the people that went missing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know it only seemed to expand like almost a course of 4 or 5 years, depending on who you talk to. It's basically, I think, 5, but anyway. Yes, so there's always that. There's the ghost town. You got the weird cryptid that you hear about, some UFO, some Bigfoot, supposedly man-eating stone, etc., I guess. So, I guess, without further ado, what is your story of this area of Glastenbury?
So, when I was in high school was especially when we would go up, my group of friends and I would always go up, because you want to experience these things, especially growing up hearing these stories. You want to experience it. You want to see for yourself. Why is this area so creepy? What happened in this area? And there's always going to be speculation about what happened around there, what's up there, what exists up there. I'm of the firm belief of the man-eating stone, or that it could be a different dimension up there. So spending so much time up there and learning the area, you get this feel for the forest, and it's just so quiet up there and so creepy, and you don't hear a lot of birds and you don't hear a lot of animals. It's almost unsettling. Especially where the fire tower is up there off Kelly Stand Road and the east side of Glastenbury Mountain. You go up there and, you party with your friends and you camp out there. And one of our camping trips that we were out there, and again, like I said, the silence is something that is always very unsettling up there. We had all camped out there, and as teenagers do, tell stories about what we all believe happens up there, or if there is truly a cryptid that kidnaps people, or a portal to another dimension. We were camping, and in the middle of the night, we saw all these really weird lights, not swamp lights, not Air Force lights, because there is an Air Force up there, I believe, an Air Force base up there. And it was just weird, and we didn't know if it was other people's flashlights or if it was our friends messing with us. But just seeing it and being open to the experience of it kind of gives you a sense of unease. But we spent a lot of time up there as teenagers, and as going into adulthood, having a better understanding of the paranormal, trying to feel what's out there. Anytime I've ever gone up there, it is the silence that really gets to you. Because usually if you spend any amount of time in the forest, you know that you do hear birds, and you do hear the wind, and you do hear the rustling of leaves. You don't hear that stuff up there. And, there's countless stories from other people and people that I grew up with. And even some of my teachers when I was in high school had stories from this area. But, yeah. It's a really interesting experience to go up there and actually find it, and I think that there's always going to be some skepticism around these experiences, which is healthy and normal, but I think without experiencing it yourself, you should always just give it a try. You should always try it and go up there and see for yourself, see how it feels.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going back real quick, so how many nights would you say you guys stayed up there? Was it like one night, 2 nights?
It was a weekend night, you know. It was a weekend in the summer. Usually we'd always go up there for like a Friday, Saturday, and usually leave on Saturday night or Sunday morning.
Yeah. So going back to the light that you saw then, I kind of almost heard like a similar story where like these hikers were going up like one evening or something and they saw these lights that just appeared and almost as if they were approaching them, which kind of nerve-wracked them to the point where they kind of booked it right back down. So the light that you described, did they do anything similar, or were they coming toward you? Were they going away from you, going higher, lower, you know?
They were erratic. They were very erratic and, you know, almost looked like somebody was pointing their flashlight and making these erratic movements, but they were so high up off the ground that unless it was Bigfoot with a flashlight, they were unsettling lights. They could have been anything, honestly.
I know you probably don't know the answer to this, but I'll just ask it anyway. If you could determine how high up these were, maybe feet-wise or whatever, like how would you describe the height of the lights?
At least 10 feet off the ground.
So that's pretty far up.
That's pretty far up,
yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, is there anything else that happened prior or here afterward? Like, I don't know, like maybe as you woke up the next day, maybe did you guys talk about it? Did you guys did anybody else see anything differently?
No, you know, we all kind of were, not, shocked isn't really the right word. We were all like, that's not real, that's not happening. We don't believe that that's what's happening. So the next morning, we all sort of discussed what we thought it could be, and we all kind of came to the conclusion that it was probably aliens. Like I said before, I ultimately believe that it's a portal to another dimension. And like I said, there's always going to be skepticism around other people's experiences, but until you experience something like this yourself, I don't think that you can fully grasp how it feels to see something like that.
That makes sense. All right, Kat. Well, I got one last question for you, and then that'll be it for this time. So before I ask this, thank you for your time for sharing. This was an interesting story, especially with the lights, because I kind of, like I was saying and mentioned, like, you know, I've heard something similar, so this kind of backs up that theory that I've heard. But anyway, the last question I would like to just say is, for those that aren't familiar with the area, how would you describe Glastenbury Mountains, really, to somebody?
It's a deep old forest. It's a very old forest. I mean, you can tell where the town was because that's the younger part of the forest because it had been clear cut. But it's this, like I said, the silence. I keep going back to the silence because growing up in Vermont, you know, you spend a lot of time in forests and wooded areas, knowing how it feels and knowing kind of a baseline of what a forest should feel like. And it's dark and it's kind of creepy, and you know, you're very high up in the mountains, and a lot of those mountains kind of collide into each other and create this little valley at the top. You know, so which is like what the Indian tribe mentioned of how weird it is at the very top. Right, at the very top, it's almost like you're in a pocket. Some people call it the banana boat because of the way it's situated, and that pocket is usually where it's quiet, it's silent. You know, you don't see a lot of animals skittering around. It's a dark old forest.
There you go. And I probably already know the answer to this, but we'll just say it anyway. Like, have you gone back to camp or just gone back to just, you know, hike for the day?
I actually have not been camping there in about 15 years. that was one of the last camping trips that we took up there. I don't particularly care to be spending the night in the forest in Glastenbury anymore after that. Day trips are fine. We did used to go snowmobiling through there when I got a little bit older. You would think in the wintertime it would be more creepy, but it's actually not. I feel like in the wintertime it was actually a little more lively, surprisingly. Because in the summertime you expect to see wind and leaves and animals, but in the wintertime it's not as unsettling.
Probably because of the less amount of leaves, and you can kind of see more out there versus it being covered in the leaves and more, do I dare say, condensed, I guess?
Condensed, yeah. It's a condensed forest because it's such an old forest.
All right, Kat. Well, on that note, I think that will wrap this up. So, again, I thank you for your time. And for everybody else out there, you know the drill. Keep your eyes open because you just never know if you're going to find anything in the woods. And make sure if you do, you come back alive and share the story.
Thank you.